Okay, so our first question is, as you look at the pictures of Victorian fashion, what sorts of inferences can you draw about the society?
I noticed that like what they were wearing wasn't that practical. Like they were really nice dresses and stuff, like super big and elaborate and really nice and beautiful, but it wasn't really. It looked like it wasn't really meant for comfort, just like for showing off. Probably like your social status, because probably like higher up people could only like afford to have those types of clothing. Um, so yeah, fashion wasn't really necessarily about practicality or like functionality necessarily, probably.
Yeah, I put like that women dressed more for others than they did for themselves. Like, because obviously they probably weren't comfortable and like they might have felt pretty, but it just, I think they were trying to impress other people. Like, they definitely weren't dressing for themselves.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. They were kind of obligated with the way of dressing. They feel like I feel like they think they look okay, but that's not the way they will prefer to be dressed, I guess.
Set um, set femininity and masculinity. Like were like really over the top and a lot of ruffles and bows and all these details and all the men's outfit. They were all wearing tailored suits, so really wasn't clothes that was like um, both genders could wear. Like so maybe that they have these set like male and female roles in society.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like because the things that you show to others is supposed to show the value, right? Um, the fashion that I see from like this period of time, um, the social or the fashion is kind of blending with all the classes in the society. I feel like from what I see, like the inference that I can draw out from the society is like there's no like not just the high class that rule the country, but other classes have access to the fashion easier, and like it's not too obvious to differentiate between different classes from the fashion that they have in that time. And it's supposed to like portray like the personality, and when you wear stuff it's supposed to portray personality or status and wealth and everything, but for this time, of course, like you can see like the dress that is more expensive or anything because there's more details or looks better, but it's not so obvious to portray that um, characteristic. Like everyone wear corsets, so like there's no um, unique
Mm-hmm.
personality in it, you know.
Yeah.
Like if you think about the fashion this time, like the punk will wear one kind, the beach girl will wear one kind, or the like I don't know, nerd will wear another kind of fashion. So that's just thoughts that I have in my mind.
Yeah, I feel like kind of going off what you're saying. Um, actors, even if they weren't rich, I feel like they dress this way to look like they were. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like that's kind of what the fashion was about, was like dressing over the top to show off like you were a rich person and like you had all this or not.
Yeah, probably if they didn't dress that way, the society would look they would look bad into the society. So that's probably why they they felt like they needed to dress like that.
I thought I read, I don't remember, I think it was the last assignment. Oh, crap. But, oh, dang it, I don't even remember this. But I know I'm not bringing this up, but I read it, and it said that people were always trying to, like, during this time, people were always trying to make it seem like they were, like, higher class. Like, that was the goal, just to make them seem like they were, I don't know. Even if they weren't high class, they wanted to, like, obtain that. So, yeah, like, through kind of relating back to what you were saying, even if they weren't,
Go through the pictures, they get more and more like kind of ridiculous, like
yeah.
crazy. So I get what you're saying. Okay, and next question: what sort of meaning can we attach to the woman's sense of what shape their body should have, or the fact that their hairstyles were simplified?
Well, it said that like communication was getting like there was better communication, and so I feel like there was more of like an ideal, like there was more of a social ideal that everyone knew of. Like there was like kind of a standard, and like everyone knew about it because communication was better, and there's pictures that were getting communicated of women that look like this, and so it's like kind of in our day, you know, when we're like, oh well, society says we should look like this. Like I feel like that's what's happening with the women's bodies, and so they all wanted to like be like that since that was like the ideal.
Yeah, especially with like the corsets and like emphasizing the small waist. That probably like set the standard of what beautiful was for women. Just like you need to have, or not, I don't know, you need to have, but just a small waist is like in, or what everyone should have with the corsets.
I agree with what you say. That was probably the way people think beautiful women look like. So they probably did this to be more attractive to maybe rich guys on that time. I think.
I think it's interesting, like when we were reading about like the romantics, like the earlier people, they talked about like all their curves and how kind of how like things could be see through and they could see the body more. I feel like they're still like going after the same image away in a way, like they're trying to make themselves extremely curvy, but they do it like in a more covered up fashion, like a more proper fashion, I guess.
Mm.
I
I
feel
think,
like that still happens nowadays. Like some girls, the more they show, the better they feel. I think that is still that still happens nowadays in society. So I don't think that has changed a lot. That's just a thought that I have.
I think of the word like, you know how have you heard about like beauty? If you want to be beautiful, you have to like kind of be patient. Have to suffer a little bit because with all the stuff that you have to do to make you look beautiful. It's kind of go along with that corset that they show in the picture that it kind of squeezes in your
their
organs inside your
insides.
body. And that's crazy. I did not know that it's that way. So I feel like the woman, they all have to force themselves in that time to like go out of their way and make themselves and suffer a little bit to be in the same standard as others. And I don't know. The question was like the meaning, but this changed from like before. I don't know, but I feel like that's the thing that is really different from other period. There's one more time, one more fashion that is the same way, right? Was that romantic? The one that they use corset too?
Hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
The
think in that one it wasn't like as severe as this one though. Like these
yeah,
were like they actually injured themselves. Like women would like break ribs and stuff.
yeah, exactly. So next question.
Yeah. So all those things we just talked about. What do you think this has to do with the way women were thought of or thought about themselves?
Well, I think like there was so much focus on their beauty, like they might have thought like all they were worth was just how they looked, because literally like they would hurt themselves trying to look beautiful, and they were like their purpose was kind of like for men to look at them and to like like it talked in the like readings like how they didn't really work often. I mean, some of them did, but most of them like the ideal was to not work and just like be a housewife and like just look pretty basically. So I don't know if their self-esteem was very good. It might have been, but it doesn't seem like it was.
Yeah, kind of like you said with like it's so impractical that I feel like that has to be evidence that they felt all this pressure to do these crazy things. Why would you do something that's hurting you? Unless you felt insecure. You know what I mean? You must feel this great outside pressure. And I think, like what you were talking about, Taylor, with this is like all the industrialization and commercialization is starting to happen where there wasn't before in other times. So all of a sudden they're probably like, in magazines or newspapers
Yeah.
or they're starting to get those images and all those ads, and I think people weren't like prepared to handle that. I think like in today's age, we're like so used to seeing pictures of models every day. Like you can't let it, decide the way you dress every day.
That's true. This was like the beginning of them like just seeing so much of these things coming at them of like these pictures of these women wearing these corsets and like thinking that it's beautiful. It's true. I didn't think about
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think that they were taught to be like this because, as Taylor and Evie mentioned, that was the only way they were able to be the center of attraction for men. So they'll, as Taylor said, they'll just be like housewife and just still be beautiful just by doing what they were taught. So probably they people back in the day I don't know care more about how the shape of the woman body look like instead of like the appearance or something.
Yeah. And though to support with um, to support with what Ivy just said about how they see the fashion on the magazine or whatever in that town, and I feel like there probably will be some of the um, thoughts or how to say the way they think from the past, from the generations before. You know how the Enlightenment period of time that Burke say about this is beauty. You know what I mean? So like they might have an idea of like the parents or grandparents told about this. They've been taught this way of like this is the standard of beauty, and if you're not like this, you're not beautiful or something. And it could be that from the period of time before, and then when they see this and they feel like, all right, this is the new standard that we have to be, or if not, we're not beautiful. That's it.
Yeah, I think you also bring up like with talking about family, just like society's expectations, whether that's family or whether that's external. People probably felt like they had to dress this way just to get by in life. I don't think it's like today, where you can like be really out there and you still have a job and you still can do all these things. Like you can be covered in tats and have crazy hair and have a semi-normal job. I feel like back then, like when you look at all the men, especially the men, I feel like if you didn't dress that way, another businessman wouldn't take you seriously unless
it.
you had like the
Um,
tailored suit and the hat and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, next question is what is the significance of the tight-waisted corset or the bustle?
I
I think
think
it
it
was
was
just. Oh, sorry, never mind.
no
No, you
different.
can go.
I
No, you
think
go.
it was just more of a thing so they could be just more attractive. I think we just mentioned this before. It was just a way to look more attractive to men and be the center of attraction. I think that was the whole purpose of using tight waist.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, it was like the beginning of just showed like what rate of lengths women would go to match this like standard of beauty as you all were talking about. Because like before this, I don't really remember reading about or like learning about anything that like women would wear or do that would like severely modify their bodies like this or like this would. Um, so yeah, I think that's pretty significant.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the equivalent of plastic surgery today. Like if these women could have had like some waist reduction surgery or something, they would do it. But they just
Mm.
did what was available to them in their time. Super crazy. Okay, we'll go on to the next one since we talked about that one a lot. Why did men become even simpler in their dress?
I think because like the men kind of realized that their job wasn't to like draw attention from how they looked. Like that was kind of the women's job, and the men were just like I don't know. They weren't trying to impress other people as much as the women were. Like I don't know. I don't know if this is like a scientific fact, but you know how like women tend to get more like jealous over certain things than men tend to. Like just typically, I mean, it's not in every case, but I don't know. It could have been like that because men aren't normally held to the same standard in society as women are, like as far as beauty goes. Like men can have imperfections and it's not a big deal, but like if a woman has them, at least in like our society, and it was probably similar back then.
Kind of still the same nowadays, huh?
I agree with that. And also, back in the day, you know how women sometimes were not allowed to work. Only guys were allowed to work, and they were the ones who had the money and were rich. So since they were the one with the money, they were not they were not like a center of attraction. Like the woman needed to look beautiful, so the rich guy would look at her and try to be with her, right? But if the guy was rich, he had no necessity to be attractive to a woman because he had all he needed. That's what I think.
Well, I think Victorian fashion, some of women works, right? Like a middle class and stuff. But if you work, that means you are not like wealthy because you need
But
to
it's
work.
still because women in that time weren't allowed to work, so there was like no way they'll have an income if they didn't work.
Yeah, I think it said in the reading that like some women worked, but it wasn't the ideal. Like you didn't
Yeah,
want to be working.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the follow-up question is, why is there so much less variation for men than for women? Like all the women's pictures, different types of dresses, and the men kind of have the same outfit, just like in a different pattern, pretty much.
I think that happens because, as Taylor say, there is no the guys the gentlemen were not the center of attraction. I think Taylor answered that question already.
Well, and I think like a lot of the women wanted to find a husband so that they could like be taken care of. where the men didn't have that problem. So the women were trying to like attract all these men by like
Yeah.
all this variation, but the men are just like they didn't really need to show off to anyone, I guess.
Or I think it could be, you know how mostly men works and either they be in a government or they just things that they do have to be like formal, and um, the style or clothes that they have is just like strict to the, how to say it, it's just for work. Um, you want to be formal, you don't want to be too fancy, too many patterns and stuff. You're not focusing on that, you're focusing on work. But women, they go to like a social party, and they can be more, that's their focus, so they can be more variety of ways that they can do their clothes.
Oh, and like one thing, I think I
Yeah.
missed this question. When asked about like why their hair got simpler, because I think like
Yeah.
there was less attention on their hair and more attention on their bodies. Like they're kind of beginning to like show off their bodies more, which was
Yeah.
like super bad like in previous times. But
Yeah, I think like going off of what Beam said, just um, I didn't think of that. That they probably don't want to stand out at work. Like you want to fit in and look sharp and look professional, but you're not trying to the way that like women at a ball probably would. Um,
even in our
the
day,
last
men still don't have as much variation as women. So I think that's kind of just
yeah,
like
yeah, that's kind of
obvious.
like
Mm-hmm.
become a universal thing. At
Yeah.
least I don't know Western culture.
Yeah.
I think it can
That's true.
change with other things. How do these things relate to such issues as relationships between men and women, or the fact that the middle class had become clearly the class of power in England?
I think
So
Taylor kind of
basically
talked about
asking
this.
why, yeah,
Oh,
why
sorry.
power and the relationships between men and women. So like, how did those two things change?
I think Taylor kind of talked about this a little bit when, or with the last question, when you said that like women kind of like they had more variety in what they'd wear to like impress or like attract like a husband. So that kind of relates to like the relationship between men and women in that women's dress was for themselves probably to express themselves too, but like also um, for the man. So
Yeah, and I think with the second half, Beam, you talked about it, how like the middle class is growing, and like the way they dressed showed that they had more power. Because I mean, when you look at these pictures, if you saw this like in another timeline, you'd be like, oh, this is the aristocrats, this is the rich people, because of how they're dressed. So it just shows like the middle class had all of this more available to them, and so it kind of levels out the playing field. And I guess that just has to do with all of industrialization in general. Just like the middle class had more power in that time zone. That time, yeah.
And I think because of how um, in this time they start to have like, you know how they talk about communication was getting faster than the time before, and then there's publication, so the fashions go out more. So I'm pretty sure they don't just do like fashion from like the high class people. They probably have some images like a communication of like the middle class people, so people can see people in the middle class more. So that's why they become more like obvious and clear to the rest of the society.
Also, I just thought of like it was probably easier to actually produce clothes. You know what I mean? Like with communication and more industrialization, like they could actually produce all this type of clothes and make them more available in the market than they used
Yeah.
Yeah.
to. All right. I guess we can. Let's see what the question is. So, 1.5 page response making a statement of how Regency fashion says something about the cultural and or values of England at the time. I think maybe she meant to put
Victorian.
Victorian.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I'm
I don't know why we would write about Regency.
yeah.
Um, and then it says start with a statement of what you want to say about the connections between fashion and values. Then reference to pictures. So definitely the growing middle class questions focus on that a lot, so we should include that. Any other values you guys think that we should include that is fashion?
I just think like one thing that's really important is there it said in the reading like there was like tiny bits of feminism starting to like come out, but for the most part, like there was a very like distinctive like this is the women's job and this is the men's job, and like that like affected their culture like in every way because it was like it's so different from our society. You know what I mean? Like the men literally did most of the work, and the women like weren't really didn't go to school a lot. They didn't work a lot. And I think that like affected like that was how the middle class was. It was probably different for lower class and higher class, but like that reflects the middle class's values.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of ways you could take the paper.
Mhm.
So I think just like any claim about how the fashion expresses a culture value. Okay, I think we're at like 29 minutes, so I think that's good enough.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and stop the broadcast.